I'm excited to lead the next conversation with two incredible individuals who have an amazing and diverse background in fashion, the business side, the creative side of fashion, but most importantly, they both understand the value of collaboration and partnerships in fashion and what that can bring to your business. With me, I have Nay. Nay is the founder and ethical fashion designer at TEGAA. Okay. And then we also have Matthew Growney. He's the creative director and senior advisor for PUMA and the creative director for Therma Brands. Nay, I want to start with you. I know we had a meeting, and I also have been looking to your background and what you have been doing. I know that you were born in New York,
Yeah.
and then you went back to Gambia,
Yeah.
correct? And then you grew there, no? You were raised in Gambia, but you talked about how your culture, your background has defined your business and what you do today. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Gambia. I actually grew up in Gambia and Nigeria, but most of my formative years were in Gambia. And Gambia is actually very similar to Miami in terms of the weather, the rainstorms, how coastal it is. So it's a very coastal country. And that really inspires, like, even all the shells that I work with, that is something that we use every day kind of in our country for different uses. But for me, I was always looking for a way to kind of use what we have locally and traditionally and kind of modernize it in a way, because we wear the same fabrics. It's very easy. We wear things that are comfortable to wear in the heat and move around. So I was always thinking of ways to create things that are easy to wear, easy to take off, like what do you wear when you leave the beach? What do you wear when you're kind of like running around in the market? So I would say that's what largely inspired it. But the funny thing is, when I had left home, when I left Gambia, I didn't really pay attention to the artisans and what they had, because in my mind I was kind of like, you see it every time, it's nothing special. And then when I moved here, I realized, oh wow, this doesn't exist anywhere else. And we also have the caste system in Gambia. So the artisans who are making the only pieces of art that you can actually take from our country and, share with the rest of the world, they're considered not good enough to mingle with other tribes within the country. So that was something that really stood out to me, because it's still very prevalent in the country today. And that's why I named the brand TEGAA, which means artisan in my language.
Thank you for sharing that. Matthew, in your case, you have such a incredible background. I know that we talked about you going to law school, then transitioning into investing, and now today you have such an important role at PUMA. Can you share with us a little bit about that transition and what your job now entails?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here. I have a very atypical fashion background. Was never in fashion, don't know how to cut, draw, sew, none of that. I think I'm credible because I did spend my 5th grade living in Paris. I think just that alone makes you qualified to be someone in fashion if you spent any of your formative years in Paris. But no, I did graduate from law school, mostly in business and contract law, which I greatly appreciated. I thought it was a fantastic education. Was never attracted to the profession of being a lawyer. I think that has its own set of circumstances of which I just didn't want to be a part of. But the law degree in itself is all about assessing risk. Like, that's literally it. Is this worth it or not worth it? So I love that part. After law school, though, I did go into investment, mostly venture capital. So from that standpoint, I learned really just how to be capital efficient. The companies I either invested in or managed were ones that were either pre-revenue or very little revenue. So it taught me, how are we going to launch our first product? How are we going to make our first dollar? How are we going to do more with a lot less? Where are we going to raise money? And so from that standpoint, I really felt like it was a great education on how young entities need to grow and what should they be focused on. And then from there, I did my own startup, which was a company that did mobile technology devices and content. And eventually I sold that company and kind of sat trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought that my entry into fashion would be through technology. So that's kind of how I made it into a brand like PUMA, was through actually Kering, which is the French holding company that owns Gucci, Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, Bottega, and now Valentino. Their private equity arm owned PUMA and Volcom, and so through that relationship, I started to work on e-com platforms, innovation, new materials, and then now here we are 8 years later, and I am responsible for new collab designer identification, so any brands that we think PUMA should partner with to tell different stories, to come up with different products, and also experiences. So I've produced for the brand important experiences like Formula One, which we just had with A$AP Rocky last week or a couple weeks ago. Paris Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, and Art Basel are usually the primary activities. So it's a blessing to be able to have literally no fashion background and end up, in kind of such a target-rich environment.
Matthew, staying in the topic of collaboration, I think that it has become a conversation today in fashion, and we have seen many high-profile brands doing this. We have Fendi with Skims, we have Gucci and Disney, and then in your case, you have been part of major collaborations with PUMA, and then we talked about a few of them yesterday. PUMA with Swarovski, PUMA with Balmain, and then you also mentioned ways that you can also minimize risk when it comes to collaboration. So can you tell us a little bit more about those collaborations and how you filter them to make sure that it makes sense for the brand?
Sure. I always take the approach that collaborations are storytelling moments. It's not about more product, because I think the world is saddled with so much product. But it's really, is this an interesting POV? Does this partnership have some sort of narrative or editorial that we really like to explore? I've been fortunate enough to handpick the collab partners I've worked with, like Maison Kitsune in Paris, or Ami Paris, or Balmain, Rude in Los Angeles, Colleen Estrada in New York. And each one of them had a very unique story. Story of a young Asian designer, story of the first trans designer accepted into CFDA. Olivier Rousting alone has an amazing story as a Parisian growing up, adopted, just an amazing story. Others like Nocesso and Levi's are about the way they used denim and the way they wanted to talk about denim. Others were brands like Jankoi, which is a woman from Russia. She's a Siberian CFDA designer from Siberia. Her husband was from Burkina Faso, and they were completely inspired by reggaeton. So Siberian, African, Burkina Faso, reggaeton. So their story visually is this orthodox Russian with Jamaican vibes, with African artisanship and craftsmanship. And I think these are stories that are important to make. And so we try to create product that mimics that. It's not another, the world doesn't need more black hoodies or, white gym shoes. They need more designer stories and creative stories. And it just so happens the product is the vehicle. And in many instances, we have to make money to do all this. So we try to do it as thoughtfully as we can.
Nate, continuing on the conversation when it comes to collaboration, I know that you do a lot to give back to nonprofit organizations, and I also see it as a way to collaborate, because as a company, you're associating yourself with an organization. Power Up, I came across the organization when I was going through your bio. What was so special about them, and what exactly you do for them? And as a designer, from a designer perspective, what is important for you when you look for those collaboration opportunities?
So I'm super grateful to be partnered with, well, I can't say partnered, but we give back to Power Up Gambia. They are the only charity in Gambia who's providing solar-powered water and electricity to all the hospitals and clinics in Gambia. If anyone has been to a third world country, you know that the electricity shuts off randomly. And it's just a way of life. So that was really affecting premature babies. It was affecting, women who needed maternal care, and they were the only ones in the country who had come up with a solution to help the hospitals and clinics not have to deal with that, because this was a real thing that was happening regularly. So to be honest, I am grateful that they accept, my donation. It's not like I'm a big company, but I was just looking for something that, aligned with my values. My company is sustainable first, is zero waste first, so it completely aligned with a company that was using solar power to provide clean water and electricity. And also, when it comes to collaborations, I'm never looking to collaborate with like the brand with the biggest followers or like the most popular. It's more, to me, it's really about, I come from a very design focused background, so it's about the quality, it's about the taste, it's about the style. Like one of my best collaborations was with a vegan cookie brand, So I think it's valuable to be creative in collaborating with people whose values you align with, for sure, and then being able to create something that will resonate with your audience.
And thank you for what you do, and especially giving back. I think that has a huge impact. Matthew, when it comes to collaboration, the first thing that comes to mind is that creative aspect between two different companies, two different brands. But from a business standpoint, I know that you also come from business development. Why is it important for brands to look for this type of opportunities when it comes to collaborations?
Well, I think a collaboration represents two kind of economic benefits for brands. One, it creates a reduction of cost. So if you're going to partner with a larger brand, chances are that larger brand has distribution and therefore probably has production. So if you're a younger brand and you struggle with cash flow to, let's say, make 500 pairs of shoes, you'd never be able to probably finance 5,000 pairs of shoes. So from that standpoint, a brand like a PUMA or a K-Swiss or a Nike or whoever takes all of that hassle of having to come up with cash flow to produce 5,000 pairs of anything, takes it away. So it reduces cost, reduces also marketing costs, because many of these collaborations, the larger partner also foots the marketing bill. So there's a lot that younger brands are able to benefit just in reducing the cost side of the equation for creating some new moment. Of course, the more obvious is it's a revenue opportunity. If you are a young brand and you want a collaboration, you should not be doing collaborations just for visibility. You should be doing it for a fee, and you should be doing it possibly even for a royalty. If you feel like, oh, this is my chance to work with a Nike or whatever, I'll just do it for free because the visibility. The problem is it doesn't set the value of what your work is or what your design is. And to be honest, I've never done in my 8 years of 75 collaborations, I've never not paid a small brand or an artist or a designer, because that's, I think, completely inequitable. Those fees, just in case you're ever wondering, those fees are anywhere between $15,000, $20,000 to $200,000, $300,000 in just a fee in valuing your intellectual property as a smaller designer, whatever the case may be. And then the royalty is how many units you jointly sell. So there's always an economic model, and there should always be, when you consider working, things like, I would love a creative fee because I deserve one. I should have a royalty because if we're selling bunches of units, I want to see the upside of that. And third is, you, Mr. or Mrs. Big Brand, you should be paying a marketing budget. I want to know, what is that marketing budget? What are you going to spend on us Because if they don't spend anything, and it doesn't matter how the partnership looks, no one will ever see it because it won't be marketed. So those are kind of the economics that I always think you need to be cognizant of, or that they should just naturally exist in the relationship.
Mato, thank you for sharing that. And now that we're talking about big brands and big names, Nay, I know you're a designer now, but you have also worked for major fashion houses. And I want to ask you to mention some of them. But throughout your time with these companies, you have come across operational methods that have worked well, and then some deficiencies. But you also mentioned that those deficiencies and the things that you were exposed to working for those companies has shaped the business that you have today. Can you share with us in which way?
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough to work for some, like I worked for Giorgio Armani, I worked for Norma Kamali, Ann Taylor, Kenneth Cole, all wonderful companies. And I will say, like some of them, some of them I learned how to run a business flawlessly, and some of them, all I learned there was what not to do. So I think if you're in a position like that, even if you're just working retail, I get it, no one really likes retail, but take it as an opportunity, as like you're getting paid to absorb information. So if you look at it that way, you're really, it's really a benefit. You're not, just folding a sweater. Like Giorgio Armani was incredible. That was one of the best companies that was run flawlessly. There's a reason why he has been #1 for so long. They know what they're doing. Everyone in the place knows what they're expected to do, and there's just no confusion. And there are other companies where no one really had a clear definition of their job. It was kind of everyone's job, and because of that, it just didn't get done. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity I had to be able to be exposed to the inner workings of these companies. And there are some companies that appear massive to us, but if you go in the back office, it's really 6 people figuring it out. There was one company where I was literally the entire production department. I mean, I was the one going to the warehouse. I was the one fitting the clothes when they came from China. I was the one dealing with the return. I was the production department. But if you called in, you wouldn't know that. You would think it was like 1,000+ people company. One thing I definitely didn't like, it was incredibly toxic in terms of the fabrics, the clothing, and believe it or not, even the work environment. And that was one thing that I knew I didn't want to replicate in mine. Like, people that work for me are completely free to come and give me feedback. They can give me suggestions. I don't lead with oh no, this is my thing and you do exactly what I say. I'm open to for people to chip in. So, because that way you kind of get people to feel like they own a little bit. When people take ownership, they care more. And I mean, I remember being in rooms where it was a fully adult person having a temper tantrum because something didn't go the way they wanted to. And I was just like, this isn't very effective communication. So I knew that I was never going to lead a company that way. So, I think I'm grateful that I was able to take in those experiences, just quietly, and cherry pick what I wanted to move forward with.
Nate, thank you for sharing that and sharing your personal experience working with these brands. We have a lot of fashion students here with us, and we often tell them, and especially the design students, they want to have their own label, they want to have their own brand, but we advise them, look, work for someone else, get the experience before you transition, learn from what they do. So I think that's an incredible advice. We're getting towards the end, and I'm going to leave a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A, but I know that both of you are connected to Miami somehow. You either have a second home in Miami or you live in Miami. What makes collaborations unique or different in Miami compared to other major markets? And what type of collaboration opportunities you feel are available here at the local level? And it's for both of you.
I'll let him go first.
It's a tough question. I think Miami, for a lot of brands and fashion, is really it's a stopover. And I say that kind of harsh in the sense that, like, global brands are like, oh, what are we going to do for Basel? What are we going to do for Formula One? Which makes it difficult if you're not in the food and hospitality market, which most brands here are. I will say that Miami obviously has this amazing scene and lots of wonderful things to create and to benefit and grow from, including its food scene, including its hospitality, including its weather and all that. So it should be more than just a backdrop to shoot content, which so many brands just do. They come here, let's go do some shots at Wynwood and that kind of stuff. But I will tell you that there is one collab that I'm doing that I'm super excited about. I am designing with a Miami brand called Cigarette Racing, which is the boat company. The boat company is around about 50 years old and was owned by a variety of different people. And in 2020, it was purchased by a Cuban family, a Cuban-American family. And it is since now being run by the 3 children of the owner, or I guess the gentleman who bought it. The three that run the company, the siblings, are like 28 years old, 31 years old, 33 years old. So they're reinventing this super macho, drug-running Miami Vice boat reputation that they had. And we will be launching the first collaboration between Cigarette and a luxury brand in February of 2025, debuting at the Miami Boat Show. It is maybe the biggest collab ever. It's not a one-off. These are 30 pieces, and each piece is between $1.7 and $2.4 million. And the boat will be co-branded like a sneaker, like a hoodie. But the amount of detail that I think we've put into this, which is kind of my long way of telling anybody who's a fashion student, is we're designing fixtures for the shower. We're designing fabrics for the summer kitchen that's in the back of the boat. We're doing the cabin. We're doing anything with fabrics, embellishments, you name it, is what we're creating. And so it's not, again, a hoodie sneaker world. Fashion is now completely beyond. It's anything you can drape, envelop, wrap, step into, etc. And that includes this boat. So I think Miami brands have these moments. They think they have to rotate the puzzle piece a little bit more than just do the traditional resort wear or bikinis or things of that nature, and think what are other POVs and narratives that we can tell in unique ways.
I'm kind of excited when it comes to collaborations in Miami, because not only does it align with my brand so much because it's an après beach brand, but I think that I'm very hopeful that we, like New York, the garment industry being so challenging. It used to be thriving at one point. It used to be, people coming in and out, fabric on the streets, and that has dwindled down a lot because production has had to go overseas because of cost of living. I do hope that it can possibly kind of move to places like Miami. Like, I got everything I was producing done right here in Florida, and I'm very intentional about doing work locally, because I think where I live, I want people there to be able to do work and get some benefit out of what I'm creating. So I'm hoping that we can do more of that in Miami, and maybe it's just a pipe dream. Maybe it's just as expensive as New York, but I was able to do it, and I'm a tiny brand without any backing, and I was able to do it. So I think it's a fresh start where people are still hopeful, and because designers in New York, at least in my space, they're just like, yeah, there's no way, we're doing it abroad. Whereas here, I've met so many people who were smaller brands who were like, oh yeah, I have this person who does this. Even when I was creating my stuff, someone connected me to someone else. So I'm hopeful that we could have some sort of garment industry here. I'm hoping that grows. And I feel like I'm meeting a lot of vibrant, interested, and creative people. And it's not as exclusive as New York can be. New York can be kind of a very close-knit kind of clique environment. Like if this person doesn't know you, you kind of don't have access. I feel like here it's a lot more open and people are a lot more collaborative and excited to kind of get to know each other and see how they can work together.
Nate, I don't know if I mentioned this, but that's a beautiful dress. Is that part of your
Yes.
collection?
Yes.
Beautiful,
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Well, it was an honor to have this conversation with both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, insight, and your background with everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.